this lesson, we will be looking at factoring using difference of squares. I think you'll see some patterns here that are similar to some previous lessons. So in our first example, we are needing to factor x squared minus 49. Notice this goes from an x squared, and then it does not have an x term, x to the 1, and then it goes to a constant, which is negative 49. You can kind of think of that like this then. X squared plus 0x, and then negative 49. Okay? Now that should look like our previous lesson where we have a trinomial, and when we factor a trinomial, we go like this. And of course, we want to list the factors of x squared, and x squared we know is x times x. That's the only way to get x squared. So what needs to go in your fronts, of course, is what has to make x squared, so it has to be x and x. Okay? And then along the back here, I need to get 49. And so 49 could be 1 and 49, or 7 and 7. So these two backs right here have to multiply to make 49. And so I'm first of all going to try 1 and 49. When it's a minus sign right here, you need to have 1 plus and 1 minus. And you may need to switch those around later. And then remember, we need to check our outsides and our insides to come up with that middle number. So outsides is negative 49x. X times negative 49 is negative 49x. Insides, 1 times x is positive x. I forgot the x right there, sorry. And I get negative 48x when I combine those two. I need to get 0. If I were to switch the 49 and the 1 around, that would not matter. I will still, because I'm still multiplying both of them by x. If I switch the positive and the negative around, I would just end up with positive 48x instead of negative 48x. So that is 1 and 49 is not it. Okay? So let's try 7 and 7. Okay? And now let's check our outsides is negative 7x, and our insides is positive 7x, and negative 7x plus 7x does make 0. Okay? I do want you to notice that 49 is a perfect square. The square root of 49 is 7. Okay? I want you to kind of come up with some patterns here. That's how this one factors. X plus 7, x minus 7. This time I have x squared plus 36. So again, I'm going to think of this as x squared plus 0x plus 36. And I will factor that trinomial, and I will have x and x here. And the reason I'm going to have x and x is because the only factors of x squared are x and x. That's it, 1x and 1x. And again, the two fronts have to make the front. Okay? Along the back, the factors of 36 are 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 3 and 12, 4 and 9, and 6 and 6. Okay? So, I know that I have to add up to be 0x in the middle, so I'm just going to try one of these, okay? I'm trying them at random. I'm going to try 4 and 9, okay? If it's a plus right here, you either need to have plus plus or minus minus, okay? So I'm going to try plus plus. Okay? So, here we go. Outsides, 9x. Insides, 4x. 9x plus 4x makes 13x. If I did minus and minus instead of plus and plus, I would just have negative 13x. So 4 and 9 is not it. Even if I switch the 9 and the 4, the same thing is going to happen. Okay? Let's try 1 and 36. Hopefully you're noticing some patterns here. 1 and 36. Outsides, 36. Insides, 1. Okay? That makes 37x. If I did minus and minus instead, which I can, I would have negative 37x. So that's not it. Okay? Let's try 2 and 18. Alright. Outsides, 18x. Insides, 2x. That gets me to 20x. If I did minus and minus, I'd have negative 20x. That's not it. Okay, I think some of you are seeing some patterns here. 2 and 18 is not it. Okay, 3 and 12. Outsides, 12x. Insides, 3x. That gets me to 15x, and I need to have 0x in the middle. So that's not it. So let's try 6 and 6. Okay, outside 6x, inside 6x. That makes 12x. It's too bad that, and if, by the way, then people go, oh, there's a plus sign right here, so it can either be plus plus or minus minus, so let's try minus minus, because some people think that's the answer. And now what happens, I get negative 6x and negative 6x to get negative 12x. And I'm not ever getting positive 0 in the middle, because when it's plus at the end, you either need to have plus plus or minus minus. So this one actually doesn't factor. If this were a minus sign right here, it would factor as 1 plus and 1 minus and make 0 in the middle, but it's not. So this whole big mess is not factorable. Alright, here we go. X squared minus 49. I'm hoping you're seeing some patterns here, but again, you can think of this as x squared plus 0x minus 64. Many of you will get to the point where you don't have to put that 0x in there. So I will factor this. The factors of x squared, the only way to get x squared we know are x and x, so my two fronts will be x and x. Then I will list the factors of 64. I hope you're seeing some patterns here. X squared is x squared. 64 happens to be a number squared too, but just so you know, the factors of 64 could be 1 and 64, 2 and 32, let's see, 8 and 8, 4 and 16, and the list could maybe go on, but we're going to kind of stop right there, okay? I need to get that 0x in the middle. Notice that 64 happens to be a square number, so I'm going to kind of get you this, try and hint at you at what's going on. If you put 2 and 32, let's say, over here, and by the way, this is a minus, so I need 1 plus and 1 minus. If you do the outsides right now, you'll have negative 32x. If you do the insides, you'll have positive 2x. So that gets you to 30x. If you switch the negative and the positive around, you would just have negative 30x. And I need to get that 0 in the middle. So hopefully you're figuring out that the logical choice here, when you have a quantity that's been squared with a minus sign in between, it has to be a minus sign in between, and then another quantity that's been squared, the factors that you're going to use are the perfect square factors. Okay, so I'm going to put 8 and 8 right here. And now let's check this. If I check my outsides, I have negative 8x. If I check my insides, I have positive 8x. Negative 8x plus 8x does make a 0x that I need in the middle right here. So this is how this factors. Again, notice you had a quantity squared with a minus sign in between, and then 64 is 8 squared. Okay, so notice you put plus 8 and minus 8 in your factors. Okay, here's another one. I'm going to do this the shortcut way. Notice that what 9x squared, 9 is squared, but 9 is 3 squared. X is x squared. So this is really 3x squared, and 4 is really 2 squared. So do you see how it's a quantity squared minus a quantity squared? You can think of this as you want to, if you want to. If you need to, you can think of this as 9x squared minus or plus 0x, it doesn't matter if it's plus or minus 4. If you need to, go ahead and do that. The shortcut, when you have a quantity that's been squared with a minus sign in between, and then another quantity that's been squared, is to factor this like this, okay? What will go here and here is what's been squared in the beginning. So 9x squared is 3x times 3x, okay, or 3x squared. And then what will go in the backs is this number that's been squared, so 4 is 2 squared, so we'll have 2 and 2. When it's a minus sign, you need to have 1 plus and 1 minus. Okay, now, check your fronts. 3x times 3x does make 9x squared. And your backs, 2 times negative 2 does give me my negative 4. And then you want to have nothing in the middle term. So if you check your outsides and your insides, outsides are negative 6x, insides are positive 6x, and that does make 0x. Okay? Now, this one is set equal to 0, which means I want you to solve it. So you have to go one more step and set each parenthesis equal to 0 and solve. So 3x plus 2 equals 0. And then I will subtract 2. And then divide by 3. And of course, x equals negative 2/3. On the other side, if I set 3x minus 2 equal to 0, I can add 2. And then divide by 3. And x is positive 2/3. Okay? Alright, again, I've got a quantity that's been squared with a minus sign in between. It has to be a minus sign, it can't be a plus. And another quantity that's been squared. So, the shortcut would be to take these two numbers, have to make the front. Okay, and I know that 36 could be 1 and 36, 2 and 18, 9 and 4, da 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 da. But you want to use the quantity, the perfect square. Okay, so I will use 6 and 6 for 36. Then, to get the back, right here, this x squared, the only way to get x squared is x and x. Okay, it does have a minus sign in between, and again, you can think of this as 36 plus 0x minus x squared. Okay, just so you know. So you're needing to get that 0x in the middle, but when you have a minus sign back here, you need a 1 plus and 1 minus. Okay, and if you check your outsides, you have negative 6x. If you check your insides, you have positive 6x, which gives you that 0x that's in the middle that we don't write, but it is assumed to be there. Okay, so that's how this one would factor. Alright, and then this last one here, notice it is not set equal to 0, so you do want it set equal to 0 first, so I will subtract 16, which gives me this. Okay, and again, you don't need to, but you can think of that as 25x squared plus 0x minus 16. Okay, shortcut would be, again, it's a quantity squared with a minus sign in between. Okay, when that minus sign is in between, we know we need to have 1 plus and 1 minus. Okay, because this is really like 25x squared plus 0x minus 16. So that minus that you see is really the back piece, and that's why you need 1 plus and 1 minus. Okay, so the way I get 25x squared, again, it's a quantity squared. 25 is 5 times 5, and x squared is x times x. So this will be 5x and 5x. And then I can get 16. Again, you want the perfect square to do this. That's the shortcut. So 16 is 4 and 4. Okay. And now this is set equal to 0, so I do want to set each parenthesis equal to 0 and go one more step and solve it. So I will subtract 4 and divide by 5. One answer, and then of course I will do the same thing with the other parentheses, only this time I will need to add 4 and then divide by 5. Okay, and hopefully that will do it for you. By the way, this does not work very well. Like if I had 16x squared minus 7. This is a perfect square. 16 is 4 times 4, x squared is x times x. But 7 is not a perfect square. I couldn't really, it wouldn't do me much good to factor it like that. Okay? So, we'll have other methods for solving that later.